an example from Japan, and it could be from anywhere in the world, really. And I ask you to try in your own minds to contextualize it in Grenada as to how you see in any element or in ICH as a whole, the roles that different groups play, the state, communities, groups and individuals, NGOs, education institutions, even research institutions. And then ultimately I asked the question that directed at a cross-section of you in the room. Unfortunately, I can't see all of you, but certainly the question has been put there. Where are we with respect to safeguarding ICH in Grenada? If we could get representation from tourism, from culture, from education, and I think here from the museum even, if we have any practitioner or knowledge bearer in the room, we'd like to hear from you. If we have any other community NGO representative, I'd like to hear from you. And just to say, it's just to say where we are, because part of what we're going to try and do is to work through where we want to be, you know? And Ezra is making note of some of these key points that will come up, and certainly will form some sort of document that we can use for recommendations going forward, no? Because remember, we can't make decisions without hearing from all of the stakeholders in any case, no? So Ezra, if you're there physically,
yeah.
So if you could lead that process, please, so that we could. Where are we?
Folks, before you answer that question, I just want to frame it a little bit so that I would like you to talk about what are you presently doing and how this work, the workshops, helping. And you know, there may be gaps, there may be overlap, but we'd like to hear about what you're doing. Give us some of the positive things that you're doing and how this work is helping. So we can go around from well, anyone. I know Danny, you can tell us some of the things you're doing and how this workshop, I know you were not here yesterday, but you can share with us how it's going to help you improve your work. You're not talking today? Well, I think you have a wealth of information we would like to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning.
We have a volunteer. Danny?
Hi, morning.
I think most of us will need to mute because there's a feedback.
Good morning.
Morning.
Right. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Wait.
Right. My name is Rena. I work for Grenada Tourism Authority. My co-worker, Curl Hushdale, and she's trying to
we can
get
only
back
take turns speaking either from in the room or on the.
Right. So
yeah.
Can I go?
Yeah, go. Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing my. Anybody hearing me?
Yeah. Now we see.
All right.
Say who you are, and then.
Okay, I'm Peter Antoine, and the Executive Secretary and CEO of the Institute of People's Enlightenment. As the word says, enlightenment, our work has been mainly in terms of education. We take credit from starting our work as early as 1995, when we started off the work with regard to bringing research relating to the Federal Rebellion, when we celebrated commemorated the 200th anniversary of the rebellion, 1995. Coming out of that, we formed the NGO, the Institute of People's Enlightenment. We also will accept credit for raising Grenada's national awareness with regard to the question of emancipation. It is our group, along with SEDO, that started the emancipation walks and flambeau marches in Grenville in 2000, when we also had the honor of having Professor Beckles deliver our first annual emancipation lecture in 2000. We are still, while we did have a break, we are still doing the emancipation lectures annually. Now, last Monday of July, annually. So the question of raising awareness of the question of emancipation has been part of our focus. We also collaborated with the Grenada Cooperative Bank to stage what was known as the Julian Fellow Memorial Prize in History, as well as the Julian Fellow Annual Memorial Lecture Series. Currently, we are actually working with persons like Angus Martin, Jonathan Hanna. We're actually developing what we are referring to as the Grenada Archaeology, Grenada Public Archaeology Network. And we have the credit of even having one of our participants from our most recent project, which is the Le Monde des Sauteurs Leapers Hill project, where we are actually raising awareness relating to the traditions, the history, and archaeology relating to the indigenous people's heritage in Grenada. It was a part of the work we are doing is at the community level, hoping that the community will come to set up their own remembrance day to commemorate or memorialize the 1650 May 30th massacre of the Amerindian people here on the island. And additionally as well, we have been doing for the last 3 years in the Ladig community, the Ladig Heritage and Honors Program, featuring the daughter of the soil, which is Louise London Little, and her famous son, Malcolm X. We just completed the annual lecture there on the 3rd Monday of February. It is also the intent that that day be known as Remembrance Day for the work month. In terms of the safeguarding, we believe that we are contributing with the question of awareness and information, having experts. We are also running, for persons who are interested, we're actually running some heritage and archaeology lectures on the first Wednesdays, which is virtual at this time. So these are some of the things that we are actually doing. Thanks.
Right, thank you for that, Mr. Antoine. One of the things you will find.
Nigel, you have to pause so that I can switch over. But you can go ahead now.
I just want
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Who's winning?
I'm good.
Okay, Ezra.
Nigel, I just want to do a little quick follow-up with Mr. Antoine. How does this work? Just give me one bullet point. How does this work assisting in that process? Or how you project it can assist, will assist?
In terms of the participants in our most recent program, the intent is to develop oral and tradition writing relating to the retentions from the indigenous peoples on the island. So we believe this project is very much in line with that, in terms of having some of these participants participate. In fact, one of the projects we're going to be doing as a follow-up to what we're doing in Sauteurs is a documentary oral history project.
Okay. Ms. Mills?
Good morning. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can. Rena.
Okay, when I previously spoke, I was just asking to let my coworkers in, Mrs. Curly Hostel, but she's now in. So probably, if you can re-ask
Don't
the
know why I
question,
getting
because it
feedback
was
now.
not there, so she can give an answer. You have a better idea.
Look, I'm gonna have to mute everybody and then allow Miss Mills to come on by herself because people have their mics open. It's causing a problem. Mute all. Good. So now, Rena, if you can unmute.
Yes, I did. Right. What I was saying, when I previously spoke, I was asking that you let my coworkers in, which is CB and Mrs. Curly Hashdialik, and
Yeah.
they got in. So probably if you can re-ask the question per se, so she can get a better idea what she should speak about.
Okay.
The question that was posed.
So go, Nigel, if you want to repeat your question for
Let me go for it.
Ajif or Ezra, okay, for
Yeah. Ms. Mills, oops. The question was, how we framed it is, where are we in our current roles? But we wanted to respond in the following way. Share with us some of the things that you're doing presently, positive things you're doing presently, and how these workshops will assist in either advancing it, clarifying it, or even for documentation and so on.
okay. So Curl, I think Curl can answer now.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being with all of you today. I actually was on earlier, but then I didn't realize that my laptop was no longer charging on its own. It appears the battery pack is no longer good. So my screen just totally went blank. So I guess I gotta get a whole new battery pack. Now, with regard to the Grenada Tourism Authority and our thrust for cultural tourism, heritage tourism, and understanding that link with developing the tourism product, and of course in looking at how do we improve on the experiences, creating those memorable experiences for our visitors or diaspora that's coming back. And I mean, in case of Rena and Karaku, which is one of our, she runs our sub office up there. We know that Karaku is the cradle of culture, and that is one of the unique attributes of selling the destination. Now, so when it comes to what the Tourism Authority think is relevant as it relates to showcasing our tourism, our cultural identity and our cultural products, we certainly are doing things on the ground. So for example, last year we would have done some work to look at doing an application to UNESCO. And this is from of course a product development perspective, but more so from a marketing perspective, how we can look at improving what we do, how that we can really strengthen the quality of the offer. So we would have actually done an application that we would have sent through to UNESCO. We would have done actually two, one for Shakespeare Mass in particular, which would have looked at a traditional component of the carnival unique to Carriacou. And then we would have also submitted another application for wooden boat building. Now, both applications were received, but we later learned that you could only send one from each country a year. So currently, the application would have been reviewed. So we decided to put up Shakespeare Mass as the first one. It was reviewed, and I think a couple of weeks ago, Keisha Jalno here at our local UNESCO office told us that, we're going to be looking at getting some good news, because really and truly what we wanted to do was for us to get inscription under the intangible cultural heritage of humanity section in the on the UNESCO platform. And we think this takes our preservation and the work that we do to another level. It was, for example, the work that the Grenada National Trust is embarking on, this is a very serious undertaking. Just the application alone that we would have gone into would have told us so much of what is needed with regard to the mapping and the assets, the inventory and the video documentary. There were so many different components that needed to be done in order to truly reflect the cultural dynamics of Shakespeare Mass, for example, and how that has lived on throughout the year. So it was quite an interesting feat for us for that undertaken. So we certainly, from our end, would have a number of things that needs to be documented and continues to be. So we see that this project coexists quite naturally. It's a natural progression with what needs to happen next for us to continue to maintain that inscription going forward, for example, for us to strengthen the product that exists on the ground. And we do that through a number of things. So apart from us doing this application, which was a first time for us, we also do a lot of training on the ground. Rena could always tell you that, we have programs that relate to historical enhancements, be it the mills on the beach or the Ningo Well. We try to do a lot of work with regard to enhancements. We have actually worked with Angus on a number of initiatives up there as well, because we realized how the two go together. The Limleh Trail was one of the more recent undertakings that we would have taken. But then, of course, we know that there are other elements of quadrille dancing, the string band music. Rena, as our product development officer in Carriacou, has taken the lead in terms of ensuring that we're able to bridge the gaps, but also to strengthen the cultural identity of Carriacou, which is a unique attribute and selling point for the island. So we continue to push on that agenda, be it its training, support to the stakeholders, historical enhancements of some of the assets we have, be it through signage. Documentation is definitely a problem. From us working in the field is definitely a problem. Even documentation of the training. The string band, the culture trained string band training as normally happens with the kids. I mean, that alone, if it means that you put the program together, you have the program, but in terms of the integral pieces of, for want of another word, the syllabus that's put together for the kids to learn the significance of not only the music, but in terms of how to use the instrument and the significance of the instrument through the whole pieces, that's very important. Even things like our festivals and events, we support those things from a cultural perspective. The Corn Fest in Carriacou, for example, we understand the significance of corn as a staple product to African ancestry. And as a result, we look to see how can we support culture and heritage, right? And you would see in our budget, actually, the product development and research budget here at the Tourism Authority, we actually have a budget item that speaks to culture and heritage support, because we understand that we have to look at the youth aspect of it. How do we bring the kids up in terms of the actual existing product? How are they at a certain standard? Because people are going to come and we realize that we have some shaky legs. So there are a number of things that we're doing. There are things that, of course, at any point we can do better. The system isn't foolproof. We are working with minimum staffing. Our Carriacou office, we have 2 offices. Our product development office down here has 2 offices. So it could be a challenge. Doing the application alone, you see that if it means that you have to get something done, you really need to say, okay, I'm going to prioritize this, and you need to pack a lot of other things. But culture going forward is and will always be, it represents who we are as a people and what we want to be able to share. And so, these are just some of the things in a holistic way that we are doing. Rena could get down to the granular details in terms of some of the things that we have done. But even for that same application, we had to do oral, and we had to go into and do a lot of documenting, a lot of documented, all of which, we're happy to share and provide support to the National Trust in going forward. Rena, if you want to add anything here, please feel free. If you want to go into any of the details of any of the projects that we have undertaking at the moment.
I think you gave a general idea of everything that we are working on. I think something you missed do is the recent findings to the Black Bay, which soon can be declared a heritage site. And we're looking forward working along with Mr. Martin, Mr. Brathwaite, the trust, and everyone to making that project a reality.
Yes, thank you, Rena. And you know, even those sort of initiatives when it comes to the Caracou Museum, you know, and linking that now with the artifacts that we actually receive, you know, these are also ways that we want to see how we can strengthen what is on the ground locally. So once you have persons locally, and of course those visiting Caracou have a better appreciation for what Caracou is all about and the significance of culture and the traditions over there.
May I speak?
Yes, you're next.
Okay. The Willie Redhead Foundation is currently involved in 2 projects, and I think both of them actually are dovetail with this whole ICH project. One of them is Mr. Joseph Rome in Walker St. Andrews has a small private museum called Rome's Museum. Many people have never heard of it. He has collected over a lifetime all sorts of things to do with country living, practical things, household things, how to carry fire from one household to another, practices of collecting food, of preparing food. We started by trying to save the collection, which has been open to the air, deteriorating quickly. And then as we got to know Mr. Rome, we realized that he is an incredible fountain of folklore. How did people live, though he's now in his 70s? How did people live? How did they communicate? What kind of celebrations? What did they eat? So listening to the workshop, participating, has helped me to focus on how better to collect information regarding Mr. Rome and preserve it. He is not going to be around forever. So we are very anxious to get this going. The second project is working with schools to identify ways that young children can be involved, educated, and motivated to care about preserving the culture. The one school that has responded very positively so far is Westmoreland. We are going to meet with the parents and teachers and make some suggestions about some of the things we think are important. And again, any number of things that many of the participants have mentioned would be appropriate for children, collecting stories from grandparents, things like that. What did you celebrate at home? What kind of cultural things does the family attend, if any? So again, it will help us focus. So it's been very useful. What I need to really work on is going to be a bit difficult, how to record all this and how to preserve it and where to put it.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, well, just after Angus Martin, he has his hand up. So Angus, you're next.
I think it's clear to see that there are lots of things going on, and there have always been lots of things going on, but again, there is no central place where you can find any of this stuff. If you don't know the people working in these things, you're not going to know, what's going on. With the Shakespeare Mass, I've been working with Rena and Neil in Caracou. It's actually going to be featured as part of the Venice Biennale Pavilion from Grenada, which will be opening in April and will go on for 6 months. So we've done a fair amount of research on that, collected a lot of video, did interviews that Rena and Neil did in Caracou. So there are things that are going on, but there really is no, like I said, a lot of this was collected by the GTA because that was part of the process for the listing process for UNESCO listing. But there is no place where you can go and say, I want to find out about this. Where is all this stuff? And I think that is the basic problem with collecting any of this information. So I think if we finish this workshop and don't have any idea of where this material is going to go, we haven't accomplished anything. I think we need to make a very important decision as to coming up with an institution that we know is going to be around and is going to be able to protect these resources. That's why, you know, whenever we have to go do this stuff, we keep going to Carriacou, as we say, every time, because we don't have this collection, and it goes for almost anything you can think of that has to do with Grenada's culture. And I think that is something that we need to say, that coming out of this is going to be where the repository is going to be for this. Either it's going to be online or it's going to be in some specific institution in the government or other private or public entity that's working on culture. You know, we do have a cultural foundation, you know, and I don't know, I think there were representatives from there on here yesterday, maybe. And I think we need to figure out, you know, how we're going to preserve this stuff, because that's a problem. And you can go, we have things about Grenada's culture in every institution except Grenada. You can go to the US, you can go to the UK, and you can find things about Grenada's culture, recordings and stuff that has been done since the 50s, you know, even before that, you know, and available in American institutions and things like that, but none of it is available in Grenada. And that is because we lack institutions for culture, and we don't have archives or anything like that. So if we continue doing this stuff without the concrete decision of where the stuff is going to be, we're going to be spinning top in mud, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Really good. Okay, Danny, over to you.
Okay. All right. My name is Danny Donlan, and I own and run a company called Savvy Grenada Sailing Charters. We have a couple Carriacou sloops, which we charter to Grenadans, which we charter to tourists. And I hire the boat builders when they're not building boats to actually be the captains on these boats. So what we try to do is provide an authentic Grenadian experience and talk about the culture of boat building that's been happening for over 200 years in Grenada, and also trying to keep that culture going, because it is, you know, not as much boats are being built now as 100 years ago, as 200 years ago. And what you've found is that a lot of the tradespeople that used to, well, plantation owners, a lot of the guys, the tradesmen that used to use these boats to trade with, are now using iron boats instead, that have bigger engines, that have more storage space and stuff like that. And not many people are using the sloops anymore. So we are trying to keep the tradition going, like I say, by hiring the boat builders, by telling people about the culture. And I think my case is probably a good case that you can actually, if you can make it financially sustainable, then you can keep the culture going. Because now now the boat builders can see, okay, this is something that we can do in Carriacou, this is something we do in Grenada. It's actually being done with Carriacou sloops in St. Lucia, in Antigua, in St. Bart's. So there are quite a number of places that do it. We also, well, we don't do it anymore because of COVID, but before COVID, we used to sail up to St. Bart's every year for a UNESCO-sponsored market day, where we would bring products from Grenada, whether it be chocolate, art, spices, you name it. You know, I would go to all of the boutiques in town, and I get them to donate. I mean, books from Ricardo Kings Douglas, that I get them to donate items so that we could sell at the market up there, because Grenada always had a very close connection with St. Bart's in terms of trade and stuff like that. And like I said, we just try to keep things going, and we're in the process over the next couple of years of hopefully building another boat, but also getting apprentices involved when we build the boat as well, and getting the just getting the culture more out there. So something that I'm very passionate about. And the reason that I got passionate about it is because in 2007, I was lucky enough to be in Petit Martinique for the launch of the boat that I own now, Savvy. And I just fell in love with the pageantry of, you know, and the culture and everything behind that launch, you know, from the cake dancer to the stick fighters to the, you know, to the string band and the, you know, guys playing their banjos and their guitars and contours and drums, and the ladies singing to encourage people to push the boat into the water, to everyone stopping every 10 minutes to bring some rum, you know, to the boat finally being launched and the flag being unfurled, where for the first time you actually saw the name of the boat, you know, and I mean, we do regattas all over the Caribbean as well. Grenada in January, we go to Beckwith for the Easter Regatta. We do Antigua for the Classic and St. Bart's for the West Indies Regatta in April and May. Come back down here for Petit Martinique in June, and then Caracol Regatta, which is the oldest regatta in the Caribbean, in August. And, you know, over the years, I've seen the events becoming smaller and smaller, just because it's a very expensive to maintain these boats, and it has been done for years, I mean, for decades by fishermen, actually, you know, and I think more and more these guys don't have the money to keep things going. And, you know, so it would be nice to see the corporate world get involved and actually help out with keeping these events going, because, you know, up until 15 years ago, you went on to Grandman's Beach outside of the Radisson, and there were 100 world boats there. And when you go now, it's 20, you know, so it is diminishing, and it is up to government, corporate world, everyone to get involved in this, because if you lose this, you lose 200 years of our heritage, and something that only Grenada has. No other islands in the Caribbean build boats on the scale that Grenada builds boats. So it is something that I'd love to see maintained, and trying in my own small way, you know, and I'm hoping that other boat builders see that it's something that is viable, that they can make money from doing tours and stuff like that, and more people start doing it. So anyway, so that's my part of things. And then in terms of, well, you know, something that I always wanted to see is we have the Caranas, we have these buildings that all have 300 years of history in them, and nobody knows what the history is. You know, and it would be nice to actually get the owners a lot of these buildings, put small plaques on the buildings, just dating when it was built. And you know, all of these buildings have history. You know, whether a prime minister is there or a commissioner of police live there, and it would be nice to see a lot of those buildings having that. So when you're just walking across the Caranas, you could actually stop and read, you know, read these things and see what's what the building, what's happening with the buildings. Okay.
Thank you, Danny. I want to get back to a point that I think Gloria and Frida mentioned. I hope that when we talk about repositories, we're not thinking of repositories only in a physical sense. I think Frida and Gloria had made a point that repository could also be online. And as you know, it wouldn't, you know, relatively speaking, it might be cheaper than the physical place. So that's something basically we can, if we digitize it, we can get these digitized information and documents on an online platform, and it can be easily shared. So I want to make sure that folks understand that repositories are not only physical.
Okay. Well, just before the break, Nigel, one of his slides, he was showing the role of government and the sort of framework that's required, legislative protection and enforcement, these sort of things. So we got to put things in perspective now. Grenada is 48 years old as an independent nation, and that's a long time in terms of human years, but for a nation, it's a short time. And the first priority usually is basic needs, survival, that kind of thing. And then the other more, I don't want to say exotic, but needs come afterwards, like philosophical things like who are we, where are we going, once you get past the scramble. And in the meantime, what has happened from independence to now is that people have been just trying to hold heritage together, individuals really. Some people have like Mr. Rome would have his little private museum. Angus Martin would try to keep some, create his own small archive. I know I have old photos and things like that. So it's like a leaking boat that you're just bailing and you're waiting for the right opportunity when the basic needs have been taken care of so that we can address the other issues. And I have a strong sense that now is the time that heritage is going to be looked at, just based on the response of the participants, the attendance here today. Now, you would have heard of PPP, which is public-private partnership. A lot of governments worldwide realize that people are in a hurry and they can't do everything themselves, and things are sequenced by government. People can't wait a whole generation to see something happen in their community. So governments collaborate with private sectors and communities to try and get things done. So if you have potholes in the road in front of your house, you ask government for some gravel and you get the community together and you fill the holes on the weekend. You know, so we've been waiting a long time to see what was happening with heritage, and it's taking very long. And we have to be thinking that even though in theory you could say that, well, government is there and so on, they should be doing more. If they are not, you can't wait, because heritage conservation is a time-sensitive thing. We cannot wait. So we have to be more proactive. We always can get government verbal and written support, endorsement for what we're doing, but this has to be a community-based project. And Angus is right about the storage of information. There are a few policies that come up every now and then. The government would hire consultants to advise on what should be done about this or that. And they become discussion points, but it's the implementation that's not happening. So we have to decide before this workshop is over, which one of these policies we're going to follow, because there's a 2012-2013 cultural policy, which says there should be an umbrella body. And that makes sense. It's like a central communication point, a notice board that everybody can turn to just to check and see work is not being duplicated. Everybody's aware of everything. And there are basically two bodies created for that purpose. One is the Cultural Foundation and the other is the National Trust. All right, now we know that the Cultural Foundation would like to have more resources and has to focus mainly on Carnival and not the other areas. This is always a challenge that we have as we are a young nation. Things are done sort of piecemeal because the budget is small. So what we could do, and this is a suggestion I'm throwing out now, is have the two bodies collaborate, the Cultural Foundation and National Trust, to be the repository for this data right now. So if we decide we have one set of digitized data that we have duplicates of it in both organizations, so that if one runs into any kind of problems, we don't lose everything, because the problem again is sustainability. Government itself changes the way it does things. Sometimes ministers responsible for culture change maybe every couple of years. Departments, ministries combine different responsibilities. So now, like culture is with youth and sports, it used to be with tourism, sometimes it's with education and so on. So from the point of contact inside government, that keeps shifting. So government itself is stable and exists, but the heritage responsibility keeps shifting. The Tourism Authority is an external body that would be permanent and long-term, but they tend to focus on getting numbers into Grenada, people in, bodies in beds. So things like heritage become a secondary priority, and the same thing happened with yachting. All of these things become secondary priorities until they become big enough locally to have their own standalone feature. And heritage is something right now that's not big enough to stand on its own. It's like an orphan, it needs somebody to adopt it. The National Trust for sure was created only for heritage. That's what happens worldwide. National trusts basically are the property management organization for government and church properties. They just manage these sites and try to make them viable. And if they can't be viable based on gate entrance and other methods of revenue collection, then the owners subsidize it. In other words, the government would subsidize a national trust of the UK or in the US or whatever, so that these things can run. And even in Italy, people were horrified to hear that certain fountains, or the famous fountains, might be adopted by a private sector because the government just didn't have enough funds to maintain all of these fountains. You see what happened with Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Caught fire because the budget for maintenance just was getting less and less every year. And you take a chance with these things and it backfired on them. But the important thing is that immediately the French public reacted and made it very clear that this must be renovated immediately, and cost did not even seem to come into the discussion. It had to be done. This is a national symbol. There's a lot of emotion here. The government responded to the movement of the people. So if we can get heritage in Grenada to become a people's movement, something that the people are clamoring for, then the government, of course, will respond. Governments always respond to the demands of the people. So this is why conservation of heritage and what we are doing now has to be a community-driven movement. We can't sit back and say, well, that's government's responsibility, and we'll wait until they move so that we can move. We have to move. And remember that we are the community too. The people who work in government are the community as well. The organizations represented here are the community. So it's not like a separate entity that you're having a tug of war with. It's us. So we have to make it very clear to the people in our communities, our constituents then, that it's their responsibility. They have to make some effort, some sacrifice, allocate some time, and even within this conference here that we are having, this workshop, we have to make decisions in our own minds, how much time we can spend continuing doing this after we leave here on Friday. Is it going to be a couple hours a week, a couple hours a month, off and on, depending on how busy we are? Because sometimes you can devote a lot of time when you have some free time, and other times you can't spare a minute. So we all have to come to terms with this, be realistic, because once you voice your commitment to others, others are relying on that and trying to coordinate, make things work. So remember, public-private partnership. And the government has done what they can for this particular project, which is the endorsement. UNESCO has done what they can. The rest is up to us. So when we ask the question about what's going to happen after we disperse, how do we make sure this is sustainable? It's on us. We are the ones that have to make it work. We have to be clever, and we have to find ways to identify by the end of this week an umbrella body that's going to take the responsibility of coordinating and communicating so that we don't fragment again as we have in the last 48 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Daryl.
Okay,
colleagues,
hold on, Nigel.
Just very, very interesting insights and opportunities I hear. Really, I know Margaret wanted to speak, Anthony and the Grenada, but what I'll ask you to do is to either leave your comments in the chat so that Ezra can make a note of it. But because I notice now we're kind of behind schedule quite a bit. But that is not to say that what is being said now is not important. Actually, what I would want to do now is based on, because what I heard, I'm sure I don't understand the full dynamics of what's going on. But as you were speaking, my mind was working toward a possible model. So what you want to work toward is a model for safeguarding intangible cultural heritage in Grenada, right? You want to, and it can be in sync with what is happening in terms of the tangible. It can be in sync with what is happening in terms of tourism. And I say in sync deliberately because there are overlaps there, right? And so the challenge is Ezra, and I'm putting this because Ezra is functioning as the moderator and who will bring us up to speed on Friday when we take note of these recommendations. What I would ask you to do is to continue to factor in, write the comments in the chat, listen, we have the recording of what was said, and I've written some of it down. But Ezra, would you be able to draft or sketch a couple proposed models for Grenada based on the discussions that are happening now of how to go about having the various entities work in unison or in sync? Even though you might have varying responsibilities, what you're looking for are the areas of overlap, right? And to see where you can work together. I'll give you an example of what I've seen done in some places. So you have different NGOs. I noticed, I'm looking at the list, I see various NGOs. So what has happened is that the state has a statutory body for culture that is supposed to manage the country's cultural affairs, but then you have a number of decentralized NGOs and entities working in culture. So what they did is that they formed an ICH network. All of the entities are able to continue to do their work, but with the reinforcement of the network and the reinforcement of support of the statutory body and the reinforcement and support of the state entity through the ministry, right? That's just an idea I'm putting out there. It could be, you'll have to think about the dynamic on the ground in terms of Grenada and what the model can work. Where does the work of the GTA overlap with the work of the trust, overlap with the work of the other national entities? And then what would be the procedures and for meeting and supporting each other? Will that mean, well, first off, agreeing on the ICH component of it, what plan of action will you pursue together in terms of the documentation, the inventorying, in terms of schools, in terms of, I see Peter noted here, a possible a conference every 2 years to deal with culture and heritage, of which ICH would be a component of that conference. So Ezra, the challenge for you, my brother, is to sketch something, no? Is that okay? Discuss it with Adriana, with Daryl, with all the stakeholders, with Rena, with the various voices you've been hearing. You put together a visual thing that we can look at on Friday, so to see if it meshes with how people understand each other, no? So it's to take advantage of the opportunity that we're looking at, no? Right? Is that reasonable?
Yep.
All right, so thank you for your inputs, ladies and gentlemen. And we want to know, I noticed we have about, an hour and a half remaining. And so we have two units to go through. The next segment deals with awareness raising. And there are some similarities with the previous unit. So the question is one of awareness raising with respect to the convention. Let me bring that up here. So what we'll be looking at here is what is awareness raising? Why is it needed? Sorry, let me remove this hand 1 second. Awareness about what? How can awareness be raised? By whom? Whose awareness is raised? The use of the emblem of the convention and avoiding negative consequences. So in the text of the convention, the preamble talks about awareness of the importance of safeguarding ICH. The convention is, after all, the Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. That's the official title. Article 1 outlines, in terms of the purposes of the convention, the safeguarding of ICH, the respect for ICH, the awareness of the importance of ICH, and international cooperation and assistance. Article 14 says that each state shall endeavor by all appropriate means to ensure the recognition of, respect for, and enhancement of ICH in the society, in particular through educational, awareness raising, and information programs aimed at the general public, in particular young people. I was just thinking to myself just now that we haven't heard from many of the youth who may be in the workshop, and certainly we'll try and hear from them as we proceed. But in thinking about the model for implementing the convention in Grenada, notice point 1 here, subsection 1 of Article 14, says through educational, awareness raising, and information programs aimed at the general public. So whatever mechanism or model you decide on, this already gives you a starting point, no? You'll seek to find synergies for education, educational outreach. You'll seek to find synergies for awareness raising. You'll seek to find synergy for information programs. What I've seen done for example, in some of these networks is that regardless of the element being addressed, whether it's boat building or mask or food or so on, what the network does, it becomes a support for the other. And so you find the members attending events of the persons and the entities within the network, so that it helps with the continued support and building and reinforcement of the ICH by way of safeguarding, no? And of course, the emphasis here is on young people, and the reason for that is it assumes that the elements of culture of ICH are transmitted from one generation to the next. So if we can engage the young people, that bodes that there's a better chance of these elements being viable into the future. Someone made the comment yesterday, I don't recall who it was, says, well, the young people often say to us, but you didn't teach us this. What happened? Why are you demanding that I think it must have been Marlene, why are you demanding this from us when you haven't taken the time to teach us? And it doesn't have to be, I think, where you deliberately sit and teach in a classroom. It's to create the open cultural space where there is an immersion. I think they say immersion is one of the best ways to teach, no? You want someone to learn patois or French or English or Spanish or whatever, the best way to do it is to become immersed in it, no? Right? And it's the same concept here. And that contributes to recognition of the ICH and the persons involved, the respect and the enhancement of it. Awareness about what? In terms of the convention, we're talking about first the existence and diversity of ICH, its value and function, the role of the community is concerned, the threats or risks to its viability, possible actions or good practices that are already ongoing. About the convention and elements that are inscribed and good practices, right? All of these things together are acts of safeguarding, right? Ways to raise awareness, radio, television, and websites. You want your journalists to proactively seek out your ICH initiatives and events and to report on it. Some people argue that when that happens, it positively reinforces the national psyche of the people and of the country, no? When you have news that's we're culture leads. No, I remember hosting a workshop here in Belize where we pleaded with the media, please stop covering the violence as much and have culture lead, no? Have culture lead so that you can help to shape positive outlook and positive thinking about your society, about educational programs that are going on, networks, meetings, and seminars. That 2-year initiative for discussing culture and ICH sounds good, you know. I could see it being a space where you even attract a regional audience and international audience, and you reinforce each other, no? When you do this and you update, you can discuss everything from the work that you've been doing to work that is proposed and research that has been done and so on. About festival and events, about commercial activities, and you notice here it says, for example, tourism. So tourism has a role to play. So it's not just beds in, the opposite, bodies in beds, I heard Daryl say, right? It's about having bodies in beds, and when they get out of the bed, they have experiences that are grounded in the intangible cultural heritage of Grenada. So the two go together. There's an opportunity there. About inventories, right? Here's an inventory. This is what our understanding what the cultural landscape looks like. That's the importance of an inventory. Having documentation, descriptions provided by the communities, written by the communities where possible, updated by the communities of what we understand to be our or we culture. About the list and register of the convention, right? The urgent safeguarding list, the representative list, the register of the convention, about ICH policies. What policies are there in Grenada that allow for cultural heritage to thrive, right? And once this becomes a part of people's consciousness, then people will feel confident to act, you know, to become more confident, I should say, right, to act. Who raises whose awareness? This is critical. The committee and the secretariat. This is at the international level. Committee of the convention, right? States parties, the media. I can't emphasize enough the role of the media. You know, you see how, although it's a terrible example to use, but you see how in the US elections, there was mass interference, and not only was it media, it was a social media interference, right? And so you can use media in positive ways, right? And we don't have to think about this television anymore. I don't know what the nature of things are in Grenada with respect to how the media reaches the public. But here, people don't watch TV anymore. They watch the news on their phones, no? On Facebook, right? Hardly see a television on anymore. Everyone is on their face is in Facebook, right? Right? Institutions and organizations, including NGOs, communities, groups, and individuals concerned and their organizations, right? So there's a place and a space for everyone and raising awareness about their work that they're doing. You know? The role of the committee. One of the things that the committee does is that the committee maintains an ICH website here. So for simplicity, for colleagues, all you have to, you go on Google and you type in UNESCO ICH, and we'll bring up the page that deals with intangible cultural heritage in UNESCO, no? Right? And that is one of their international mechanisms for awareness raising. I think I see actually, right now, if you go on the UNESCO page, Grenada, the project on Grenada is on there, no? Right? You can take a look at that and you'll see that there's a tab there that reports on the Proud of My Heritage project, which is now underway, right? The role of states. We talked about the role of the state and its various entities. The state ratifies the convention. The state then is to ensure, remember earlier this morning, the state is then to ensure the safeguarding of ICH. The state has a responsibility to facilitate, if it doesn't do it itself, allows for the creation of inventories, an inventory or inventories, depending on the situation in the state, right? The state has a role to provide policy support, legal support if required, and so on, depending on the situation, right? And then the state might even allocate from a budgetary standpoint, resources to support all of and to subsidize the initiatives that are happening across the country, so long as certain criteria are met, no? Criteria are met. You know, that states can go that far, you know, to make budgetary allocations. The role of the media. The word that comes to my mind when I think of the media is the word big up, no? Is big up a term that is used frequently in Grenada?
Yep.
Well, to put it simply, if the media can big up the situation, the thing becomes big. You understand what I mean, right? It's all about perception. What you give importance to becomes important, right? And what is more important than culture? What is more important than that? Really think about it, you know? What is more important than that? There's nothing that persons do that doesn't come from their cultural understanding and socialization, right? There's nothing that does not come from culture, right? The role of institutions and organizations, we just had that discussion, you know? Where are we? What have we been doing? And in the discussions, you began to recognize synergies and you asked the question yourself. Angus posed the question, you know, if we don't leave here by the end of the week without knowing what we'll be doing with this information, we have a problem. If we don't, then Darrell raised it, right? If we don't leave here by the end of the week having some idea of how we'll cooperate, right? And these are genuine good questions to ask, right? And of course, Ezra has the challenge of shaping it based on his listening, no? The role of communities, right? It's a community-driven convention. Communities should not be afraid to speak up, right? You should not be afraid to speak up. If you own something, it's not someone else owning it. You should always be, you know, be confident. If it has value, you know its function. Speak, seek assistance, seek collaboration with the entities. And the beauty of this workshop in this format is that you're seeing the entities and persons involved. And if you look at the screen and you say, oh, I've always wanted to find out about what the Willie Redhead Project Foundation does, what they do, that's Maria. Send Maria a private chat message, right? Engage each other. It's not you shouldn't be afraid to do that, you know? Be open and you know, work together, find ways to collaborate, right? Create synergies and reinforcement of each other. Of course, you've noticed on these PowerPoints you see on the upper left-hand corner there, the emblem of the convention. That is the emblem of the, you know, they always have these little images, no? And of course, what project, it's just a formality here, but in terms of implementation, this is for the knowledge of the state and the NGOs and so on. Wherever there are projects involved with the convention and so on, the emblem, and especially where UNESCO is funding it, you want to integrate the emblem. And we went through this already in preparation for this workshop, right? The emblem is used to signify the international cooperation component of it, no? Of course, one of the things you notice in bullet 4, it says commercial use is possible with under strict conditions. You can't use the logo of UNESCO to some private venture where you're saying and you're using it to make money, you know, that's outside of the scope of the convention. But I'm just saying that I don't expect that to be the case, no? Now, avoiding negative consequences. No? One of the things will always be, especially when implementing the convention and trying to raise awareness. Community involvement is key. Without it, it's a non-starter, right? Imagine me speaking as if I'm a researcher, right? I'll speak as an authority on Shakespeare and Shakespeare mass. I'm the authority figure on that. No. Back up a bit, Mr. Inkalada. The authorities are the persons who are directly involved with it. No, I might have the pleasure of working with and speaking with and interviewing and documenting and so on, but that's just a privilege I enjoy. The owners, the transmitters are the communities involved. No, and remember that circle we talked about this morning, the constantly expanding circle. Doesn't mean that I don't have a role in it all as a researcher, because I get to share and with the permission of the practitioners and so on, I get to share on their behalf. But I also have to ensure that I get their consent. I also have to ensure that they give me the access. I can't go and claim and demand access to particular aspects of an element that's not that I'm not allowed to see. I know of some ceremonies in the region that have spiritual elements and they don't allow you access to them. Even though I might be a researcher, they might even invite me. They'll say, well, for this, you can't come inside this room. And I have to respect that, no? Right? Mutual respect. You want to be able to protect the viability of the element. You know, sometimes you might be thinking that you might be doing a good thing, especially as a researcher, no? You might think you'll be doing a good thing by going into the community and finding out all the secrets, and you go out there and you put it out there, and all of a sudden, there's negative backlash on the community, right? Because you thought you understood what was going on in the element when you actually didn't understand. You gained access and you thought you understood what you were looking at in terms of the function and value being manifested in the element, the ICH element.
You'll send the PowerPoint.
All right. Gloria, you wanted to share something?
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I was disconnected from one laptop, so I just tried another one and got back in now. Sorry.
All right.
I realized it was unmuted.
All right. Okay. So you want to ensure that you protect the viability of the element. You know, I'll give you an example. Here in Belize, about 5 years ago, they were building an offshore, cruise ship hub. And they built up this island and everything, and they had this press conference now. Listen to this now. The foreign investors had this press conference and they excitedly went up to the podium and said, look, there's going to be culture, it's going to be a showcase of culture at on this island and so on and so forth. And he said, we're even going to have the dugu being danced on the beach. And everyone's mouth was left open. It's going to be what? Dugu being danced on the beach. Now, by the way, Dugu is a sacred ceremony among the Garifuna people involving their ancestors, right? And this guy, who has no idea what he was saying, just try using for marketing purposes, went up and said that they're going to be dancing Dugu on the beach. Well, he quickly had to apologize, no? Because that was, firstly, he was jeopardizing the understanding of that sacred ceremony. Two, and it was not what you call fair representation of the actual element. It was not a truthful representation. He didn't understand to begin with, right? And then, of course, you want to ensure that there's fair benefit to the practitioners. One of the things that I've seen now that I've had the opportunity to participate at the international level is that many states tend to pursue what you call a top-down approach, right? So they'll come up with an idea and say, well, this is a good idea, let's do this, right? And they apply for grant funding. I'm not saying that the trust did not saying that at all. They apply for funding, and of the funding, 90% is for, I don't know what, equipment and all sorts of things. And 10% go to the communities actually involved with the project. Does that seem reasonable to you? So if you're dealing with people, and this is not to say that some projects will not require the purchase of equipment and these sorts of things, it's not to say that, right? But let me give you a good example. I'll give you a good one. I know. There was in southern Belize, there's what is called the chocolate festival. So in the south, the Maya people and other groups, they plant the cacao bean to produce chocolate, no? And so they organized a festival to showcase that, and the various chocolate makers, they come out and they showcase their chocolate. And so a private company, without calling names, said, we want to sponsor the project. And so the community is excited. They said, yes, please come on board. Actually, there were two companies that wanted to sponsor the project, and they agreed, this is major. And then they signed off without fully understanding what was going on. Should I even say it? So basically, it didn't become, it turned out that the chocolate and the making of it was secondary to what the sponsors were selling. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Right? So the sponsors, who are business people, actually use the festival to market their thing, and the cultural element actually became secondary. Right? So you have to ensure that there's fair benefit, no? And be wary of that, right? Maintain the context. Context is important. All parties are encouraged to take particular care to ensure that awareness-raising actions will not decontextualize or denaturalize the intangible cultural heritage manifestations or expressions concerned, right? I just gave that example of dancing Dugu on the beach, no? That's an example of decontextualizing a particular cultural heritage. Can you think of an example like that in Grenada, where if you remove a thing out of its context, it would change it completely? Can you think of anything like that? Off the top of your head, anybody? If you took something out of its context, it would change its meaning. Anybody?
You could say it.
I would say the third night praise. You have third night praise being done when someone dies. So if you choose to have that on the 50th night or somewhere on the beach, that would not be appropriate, because it's done in the home of the family of the person who's deceased, and in the community. So the context in which it's done have to remain there for the meaning to be preserved and for the importance to be preserved. So that's one example.
Yeah,
Good,
I think
good.
also.
What's it called? Sorry, before we get, what's it called?
Third night praise. So on the third night after somebody passes, the family and the community would come together and they would pray and do a number of other things. Alcohol consumption is a big part of it, but you would, it's one way of praying for the dead and for their transition, and keeping the family company so they don't think too much of the their loss. But it's a social activity.
Good.
And
good example.
Started off as religious.
Did you say
it's religious? It's religious. It started off as
It becomes
religious.
social.
Yes.
Did you say third night praise, as in 3?
Yes, 3. Third.
Okay. Do you know why 3? Do you know what's the significance of the number 3? Is it because of the resurrection 3
I
days?
always, the Christian background, I guess. I just assumed that it was after.
Mm.
Yes, the night, yeah.
Yeah, because here in Belize and in some sense they call it novena.
Novena.
Derived from
Nine nights.
9 nights. Right.
Mhm.
Is that similar?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm Jamaican.
Not really, not really.
No.
So this
No?
is different. Still praying, but novena is a bit different. Novena is
Okay.
a bit-
I want to. Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
But all the,
go, Marlene.
no, I would, someone made a comment, it's a Catholic tradition, but interestingly so that while the Catholic Church or the it's mainly Catholic, but you have the Anglican and the Adventists being very much a part of that. I learned that recently. So some of the songs that were done, I started learning, and to do that, I had to get an Adventist praise the Lord hymnal and the Anglican hymnal. So they are very much a part of the whole process, and the songs are common to all these denominations. So.
Do you guys
My
do
suggestion was also for music here on Kariku Parang. I mean, it's humor, but unless you really get unless you've been here for a minute, you have no idea why that's funny. So that's ours.
All right. So you have to be immersed in the culture for a while to understand it.
Well, and know the people, because they'll put a verse in about a person or an incident that's well known on the island. If you don't live here, you wouldn't know why that's even relevant. But like the innuendo, because they wouldn't call the name, they call the circumstance.
I see.
And make a one-liner, yeah.
Okay.
Really interesting.
Good.
But everybody knows who you're talking about.
All right. I see Gloria, Adriana, and Owner.
And just want to make mention here of Saraka. Saraka, originally, you would have had to bring in things that you would have gotten after you did your harvesting. So you bring some corn, you bring some peas, you bring some whatever it is that you had. And then that's what was cooked and shared for the community. Now, recent times, we have seen a shift from that. I don't know if you want to call that, I want to say deneutralize or decontextualize. And what I was told is that one person who is able to fund the whole thing spends his money and buys all those things that are needed to be cooked and cooked for the community, and people just come to eat. So it's a drastic change from what was to what is. The meaning is kind of getting lost, as was mentioned by the person I interviewed here. Serious change. Yeah.
I see. There are two types of things here. One is just the ICH changing, and then one is how it's represented, no? And that's what I think that's where the meaning of decontextualization comes in. Denaturalization now might be that might be more to what you're saying, no? But the question that you would have to ask, if you examine it more closely, is it now becoming an acceptable practice as that change has occurred? No, is it the actors themselves making that change, or is it something happening, some external factor acting on it? No, right?
Yeah.
Adriana, thank you, Gloria.
Hello. Yes, 1 second. I want to mention that this was a question that was raised up yesterday, and it's tied to the topic that you're bringing. It is that, and has we learned in the past from ICH cultural heritage before, it is how to not put into place the subject matter when you implement it, when you document it, has this typical question. So it is something in regards to the intangible cultural heritage is evolving, it's changing, but we shouldn't interfere. So it's a matter of how objective you are, how not to be in place the subjectivity of it. So, you know, maybe the local communities here know how was done before, but now it's a new way. So is because it's really recognized by the community? So what is the measurement, the measure that you use? And in order to put in place first subjectivity of it, instead of your subjectivity part of it or emotional part of it, do you know how it was made before and now it's a new one evolved within? So it is because of the quantity of persons, the dimension of how that ICH element has evolved, or it's because it's not worthy to document it, or I don't want to say worthy, but it is really recognized as it has changed. So these are the things that when we come to the periodic reporting, by the way, we have to, as a state party, to report it, I believe, for each 4 or 5 years about any ICH initiative or project done in each of the countries. So we come back with the same issue. No, it's something that is abstract, it's something that cannot be touched, cannot, you know. So how we will put it into an objective practice?
Well, the best thing to do,
Just 1 second.
the best thing to do there is to just let the persons who are knowledge bearers and practitioners in the current context tell you. That's the best you can do, especially if you're going to be on the outside looking in, no? That's the best you can do, all right? Though it's only natural for us to think that we can interpret and understand that thing, especially if it's new to us. Try and resist that urge, because you probably will make a mistake. In the best you can do is to put it in the terms of the communities and practitioners, knowledge bearers concerned, no? But what you want to do is to, you know, remember that circle we talked about this morning? You want to speak with a cross section of persons. So the more perspectives you get, that will help with your, with especially if you're the one writing the narrative, that will help you with putting together that narrative. I'll tell you something though, if to be fair. Sometimes the practitioners themselves don't know what certain things are in a practice, in spite of its viability. I'll give you an example. I've seen in a Maroon community, they have these traditional songs that have been passed down from one generation to the next, right? And they're using terms, Sambai, Ramochula, and they're singing, right? And so I'm there listening to this thing, and I'm saying, what are you saying? And they're saying, well, and they're saying, Sambai, Ramochula, Abai, Ramochula, what are you, what is that? What does that mean? And then they look at each other and they say, I don't know. Right? But it is, part of it is because it has been passed on from generation to generation, and they enjoy the songs and they sing it and everything. But a lot of it are African derived words too, right? That no one bothered to ask what it meant, or no one bothered to explain to the youth what it meant, no? And so that's a distinct possibility that you face those scenarios too, no? And that's okay, right? Because the element might still be viable. It's just a nice song that, you know, they go ahead, no? I've seen, for example, some songs from traditional communities. Oh, a good one. You know that Faloma, ding, ding, ding. You guys know that one? Alison Hines, I think. You know, you guys know that, right? You probably dance to it. Square one, right? Square one.
Alison Hines.
Anybody knows the origin of that? Does anybody here know?
You could talk anytime you want.
Yeah, it's actually a folk song from Suriname. It's a folk song from Suriname that somehow ended up being crossed over into into soca, right? And actually, if you know the words of this song, from what I understood, it's actually singing about man and woman problem, no? Right? But of course, when you're dancing to that soca rhythm of it, you have no idea that that's what you're dancing to, no? Right? Right. So, but if you knew it, you're probably asking yourself, what am I dancing to here, no? That sort of thing, right? So yes, someone had want to share there.
I just want to make a comment that we spoke about certain things being used in context, and mention was made about the parang. The parang in Karakou, as well as a lot of the songs that are made for traditional mass, these were all agents of social control. So you need to know that if you misbehave in your community, your name would end up in song, and that would be an embarrassment for you. So the Shotney had their songs. The Maypole had their songs. Every Maypole dancer, they had to create their own song. So that is something that is worth understanding. So when you have the praise, and when you have all these different things that are now a great expense to the family, before when you had praise, just as with the Saraka, villagers and family members would bring things to the home, and that would take away the burden from the family members.
Makes sense.
Now you have to worry about funeral expense, you have to worry about happy hour, you have to worry about all these different things, which increases the stress. So you're begging your family members, please don't die. Not because you don't want them to leave, but the cost. Yeah, but before. So understanding what we did, the praise, yes, you had the spiritual aspect of it, but you also had those. And many families would benefit, because when everybody leaves, you have stuff there, and persons would bring food different times throughout that mourning process. So I think, I know sometimes we don't know why we're doing things, but as we document, it's important for us not to only document what is done, but ask the question why. Is there a deeper meaning? What does that word mean? And those kind of things are important for us to understand. Beautiful,
beautiful, beautiful. Very good point. That's something to remember as we undertake the inventorying phase of it, no? The quick question, is Sankey a thing there in Grenada? Sankey? Sankey.
No, what is?
Sankey, where the background I understand of it is where, because, you know, when our African ancestors used to go to church, most weren't literate, and you would have maybe one or two persons being literate. And so let's say they're singing Amazing Grace. So
Yes, we do that. We call and response.
Call and response, right? Amazing Grace, how sweet the song.
The Baptists would do that a lot still. So one person who knows the song, Amazing Grace, how sweet the song, and the crowd would follow and sing that way. And so that's how it's done. So even the praise, that is how it's done.
Okay, so it's still a part of the society.
It's still a part of it.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they sing for everything.
All right, thank you for that. All right, so here's another one. Do not stereotype communities. Sort of what Adriana was trying to understand. The subjective, objective kind of thing there. All parties are encouraged to take particular care to ensure that awareness-raising actions will not mark the communities, groups, or individuals as not participating in contemporary life or harm in any way their image. That's serious, you know. Sometimes you want to, well, I say you, but we have a tendency to project biases in day-to-day life onto different cultural groups. You know, I know a popular one is where the carnival groups, no, where the women dress in these bikinis and so on. That's the easiest one to identify. Upon them girl, them got on all of them skimpy clothes and so on and so forth. You know, that sort of thing. But that's an easy one to identify. But there are other types of elements out there in the society that if you stereotype the group, it can harm their image, no? And you know, bad news travels faster than good news, no? So that is, you have to be careful not to prejudice the societies or the communities on that, no? Do not misappropriate or abuse. All parties are encouraged to take particular care not to ensure the awareness raising actions will not facilitate the misappropriation or abuse of knowledge and skills of the communities, groups, or individuals concerned, right? And abuse can occur. I'll give you a good example with these songs, no? Where the artists go into these communities, hear these songs, take it, and they go and they make these record-breaking songs, and the communities themselves don't benefit from it, no? Right? I've seen instances like that right here at home too, you know? Even other cultural groups using the traditional songs of other cultural groups, that's fine, but it has to be done under a certain understanding, you know? Right? So as not to misappropriate or abuse the actors. Avoid over-commercialization. We started the morning talking about this. In the recap, all parties are encouraged to take particular care to ensure that awareness-raising actions will not lead to over-commercialization or to unsustainable tourism that may put at risk the intangible cultural heritage concern. You know, I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say, you know, your cruise ship comes into town and you have let's say that parang music is very popular and you want the tourists to hear what that song's like, right? And then the tourism board says, well, we're going to put a parang group out there to play for the tourists that are there. And they put them out there to play for 8 hours, right? That's an example of unsustainable tourism. That you put that same band out there for 8 hours, you're looking for problems, no? That they will get run down very fast, right? The over commercialization of it would be where you're paying them for it, but the benefit being derived from it is actually killing the spirit of the music, no? Right? And now all of a sudden, the next day, the members show up and they're too tired to play, right? I see it all the time. You see the first few days, they're dressed quite nicely and so on. And then as the days go by, you see the clothes, they're not so well dressed and can see fatigue on their face and that sort of thing. So you have to be very mindful of these things, no? Maybe you want to get other groups involved, that sort of thing, you know? Right? Becomes unsustainable. All right, so that is for awareness raising. All right, any questions or observations that you want to make at this point? Margaret, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. One that I want to add is about public awareness in terms of right to represent. I think it's worth mentioning that in the public awareness campaigns, I think we really have to drive the point that the cultural practice, the ICH, or any of the monuments, it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. I think that's something that comes through with ageism sometimes, gender. You know, in fact, honestly, right here on my desk, I love this cover from All at Sea because it's the young lady that was sailing from Antigua. And I think it's great, but I wonder in an ICH project, how quickly she would be dismissed by age and gender because it's not the traditional way that it came, but it's where they are. So that's something that I've run across and like, oh, well, you know, we got people that have been doing it much longer than him, much longer. Yes, but they are part of the inheritance process. Who are you leaving it to? And then they would stop and look at me and say, oh, okay. But I think we need to put that into public awareness really hard, drive that point.
Yeah. The opposite happens a lot of times too, you know. You're too old to be
Yes.
You're too old. We don't want to hear what you have to say, right? And this is actually an opportunity, because in many societies, I can't say, but in many societies, the elderly are marginalized, right? And put in a corner. ICH provides an opportunity to involve our senior citizens and older knowledge bearers and so on, and to make them active parts of what's going on, no, in current time, and allows for that intergenerational exchange, just as now, so which brings puts the coin together, no, the young and the old together is what we're looking for, no, ideally, right? The wisdom of the aged and the energy of the youth, I think, is one way it was described. Together make for good medicine, no? All right. So we have several comments here. Okay, Wakes is a topic taught in theater arts. Novena is just before Christmas. Okay. The Grenada Cultural Foundation is happy to discuss our role further. So that's for our moderator, rapporteur. Sankey is the hymn book. So Sankey is actually the hymn book. Okay, I thought it was the method of singing and sharing, no? All right, so we have one more segment to go. If there are no further comments, we'll take a 5-minute break. Again, stretch our legs, get some coffee, and reconvene for our final session of the day. Any comments at this point? No? Okay, then.
No.
Okay. All right, so let's reconvene then at 12 mid-12.
5. Oh,
12:05? 5 minutes.
No, do people need 5 minutes or 10 minutes? 10 minutes. They need a full 10 minutes. Circulation problems.
Yes, I understand that very well. I understand that. I don't like sitting for so long myself. So let's reconvene in 10 minutes, and then we'll go into the final segment of the day. Thanks.
Right.